How many people here know someone who was pregnant as a teenager? A lot of people don't realize how high this number actually is. And over the past few years, teen pregnancy has declined immensely. And one of the biggest factors in that is birth control. There has been a decline in teen pregnancy, but the number is still way higher than it should be. And there are many reasons for this. There's not enough proper education in middle school or in high school or even at home. And in many states, there are laws that require minors to have parental consent when, trying to have access to different types of contraceptives, including birth control. And the prices of different contraceptives, including birth control at clinics or pharmacies, are still way too high for many, many, many people to afford. So now that you're familiar with our problem, we can go ahead and move into more detail. So as I said earlier, teen pregnancy has declined over the years, and along with teen pregnancy declining, abortion rates have also declined. And abortion has been a big controversy over the past few years. Some people agree with it, some people don't, but in reality, abortion is never a good thing. It's not something that we want to do, but it is an option that we have. And we want to keep teens from even ever having to think about abortion. If our teen pregnancy rates are declining, it means that our abortion rates are lowering, and that's so awesome because then we're saving more babies' lives. Now, studies have shown that there has been a 19% decline in teen pregnancy over the past 20 years. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that number should be a lot higher than 19%. 19% in the past 20 years, that's less than 1% a year. And a quarter of this 19% decline was due to teen abstinence. And abstinence is the choice to not be sexually active. So a quarter of this isn't even due to, the new kinds of contraception that we have. It's due to abstinence, which is great. But if we made our contraceptives more readily available, maybe that number would be a lot higher than 19%. So even though our rates have gone down over the past 20 years, the United States teen pregnancy rate is still nearly double that of Canada and the United Kingdom. And I've got a little chart here. So this is our teen birth rates in the year 2006. So I've got a bunch of countries over here. It starts with Netherlands up here at the very top. It's the lowest one. And then it goes down. There's Japan, Sweden, Italy. And then right here is Canada. It's 13.3. And then this light blue one right above the United States is the United Kingdom at 18.8. And then the very bottom one all the way over here is the United States at 41.9. So, you can see it's possible to have, 3.8, 4.5, 5.1 even, that low of a pregnancy rate, but the United States is literally almost off the chart with how high our teen pregnancy rate is. Compared to all these other countries, it's ridiculous. So, of course, abstinence is great, but not all teens are going to choose this route, which leads me to my next point, education. So, there's always some sort of sex ed class, whether it's in middle school or in health class in high school. 39 out of the 50 U.S. states require sex education and or HIV education. So this is great, but what about those 11 other states where it's not required? What about those teens? I remember whenever I was in middle school, the gym coaches gave everybody a paper, and we had to take it home, and if our parents wanted us to participate in sex ed, then they had to sign it, and then we brought it back, and then we were allowed to participate. But if they didn't want us to participate, then they didn't sign the paper at all. We just didn't turn the form back in, and we didn't have to participate. This system was not very efficient because a lot of kids just didn't even show their parents the form, or maybe forgot to, or lost it, whatever the case may be. A lot of kids just didn't, made the choice themselves, like, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to show my parents this form, or I'm not going to turn it back in, whatever. And so a lot of these kids didn't get the education, even though their parents may have wanted them to. So, yeah. Within sex ed classes or lessons, only 20 out of the 50 states require the provision of information about contraceptives. So not even half of the US states require that sex ed classes talk about contraception or information about it. And 29 of the states require that abstinence is stressed. Now, I think that this is a good thing, that abstinence is stressed, because that's what I feel like it should be in middle and high school. We don't want a bunch of sexually active teens, but if the abstinence is so stressed that we're not even talking about information about contraceptives, if some teens that aren't choosing the route of abstinence are going to be unprotected. So in this day and age, it's not common to have a bunch of teens going for abstinence. So instead of focusing on, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, we need to start focusing on hey, if you choose to do this or you make these choices, here's the ways that you need to protect yourself or that you can protect yourself. So if more teens were aware of all the different new kinds of contraception that we have, then teen pregnancy rates would maybe even be higher than 19% in the past 20 years. Maybe they'd be closer to 50 or 60, maybe even 70%. And yes, the teen pregnancy rate has gone down by 19% the past 20 years. It's due to the new methods of contraception. But, all these new methods that we have are awesome. The pill, IUD, whatever the case may be. But how readily available these are to different teens, who knows? Obviously, if the teen pregnancy rate has only declined by 19%, these different new methods of contraception aren't that readily available because more people will be using them. So I have my little chart right here. And this is perceived effects to access to affordable birth control in the United States, of course. So 72% affects the financial situation of families, 68% affects the well-being of families, 67% helps the economy, 70% helps the community. There's just so many benefits to having affordable and, accessible birth control that, I just don't understand why we don't have it anymore, as you can see, there's a bunch of different, all these numbers are very high, obviously, helps the community, it helps, women, it helps families, it's just all around great if there was more accessible and affordable birth control. According to Alexandra Sipperlin, many teens don't even know about all methods that we have, and many think that they're too young to use them. So this is why I think that all methods of contraception need to be talked about in sex ed classes, because a lot of these teens, like she said, don't even know about all the different options that they have and think that they're too young to use them, even though they're not. Said methods can be very pricey and not even an option money-wise for some people. So obviously, some people, low-income houses, or, can't afford to spend money on birth control, which is, pretty common, but there's, needs to be access to it for everybody. So to conclude this topic, I want you all to think about someone that who was pregnant as a teenager, and think about all the things that we talked about today. Were they educated about the use of different contraceptives in at school or at home? And if they had access to different methods of contraception, would they have taken that option? We say that a lot of teens, don't use it because they don't know about it, but if they do know about it, would they choose to do that instead? We need to make these methods more readily available for young teens and at a low cost without parental consent, because even though our pregnancy rates are lower than they were 20 years ago, they're still way too high and a lot higher than they should be. So thank you guys for listening to what I have to say. I hope you'll take that into consideration, and hope y'all have a great night.